Welcome everyone. My name is Sean, and today I want to talk about a Hill Rising segment involving one of our favorite people, one of the worst contributors in online media, Jessica Burbank, going up against Amber Duke on the issue of DC carjackings. And the reason I want to highlight this one in particular is not only because Jessica has the same stupid non-explanation of why people commit carjackings, but in this one, it really gives you a good look, a good peek behind the curtain into what these left-wingers think about average everyday people who are victimized by criminals as opposed to their views of the criminal. You get all the sympathy, all the excuse making, all the bending over backwards to service the double murderer in this particular case, and none of that sympathy is extended to the victims of that double murder. And this is in part due to the fact that one of the victims happened to be a former Trump administration official, happened to be a commodities futures trader, so therefore they worked in finance, so their life has no value. And it's just nice to see this in HD, in full 1080p, before your eyes, so you can understand why these people should never have power over your day-to-day life. But before we get into that, I want to say thank you to everybody signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
And thank you to the podcast listeners, Spotify, Apple, and Google's podcasting platform.
Meanwhile, a Trump administration official was shot in Washington, D.C. earlier this week amid a carjacking spree. Mike Gill, who served as chief operating officer of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission under the Trump administration, is in critical condition in the hospital after being shot while picking his wife up from work on K Street in downtown D.C., just a few blocks from this studio. According to the Washington Post, after shooting Gill, the same man is believed to have conducted at least 2 carjackings and 1 attempted carjacking, and the victim of one of them has died.
So Amber, who we unironically like on this channel, unlike Jessica Burbank, lays out the premise of the story pretty straightforward for you guys out there in the audience. We have former Trump administration official Mike Gill at the time that they recorded this segment, recovering in the hospital from a gunshot wound in critical condition. Now, as you guys know, he eventually died from those wounds, and this was during the course of a carjacking spree where another man was murdered, which we will get into a little bit later, but this is known at the time that they're recording the video, that this other man was killed during the course of the same crime spree. Now, the reason I'm laying this out for you, the reason I'm making this as simple as humanly possible for you guys out there in the audience, is because this is the information that Jessica Burbank is going to react to, and we already have somebody dead as a result of this story. In fact, because the guy decided to shoot at the police, we actually have 2 people dead, but the suspect is the other person that they know about. They don't know that Mike Gill actually passed away due to this.
DC Attorney General Brian Schwab weighed in on the crime wave sweeping the nation's capital. Let's watch.
We as a city and a community need to be much more focused on prevention and surrounding young people and their families with resources if we want to be safer in the long run. We cannot prosecute and arrest our way out of it.
So as you notice right there, they cut to the DC Attorney General, who's an absolute idiot, a professional moron, and he says, oh, we need to focus on prevention. We can't arrest and prosecute our way out of this particular issue. And this, of course, is the root cause fallacy, which we've talked about many a times on this channel in its full force, and it just goes to show you that we haven't learned anything from the decades of criminal justice research, or at least the left side of the political spectrum hasn't. The idea that you need more welfare so that you don't murder somebody for their car, murder 2 people for their car so you can go on a joyride is ridiculous, absurd, and insane in every possible way. But of course, Jessica's going to buy into that, but she's going to take it a step further, and that's really what cuts to the heart of the reason why I'm doing this video.
Finally, DC using the data on how to address crime in the city, but I don't know, that guy that was a commodities future trader, dangerous business. Who knows if it was organized or random? But I kind of like this approach. It seems to be the right approach to me.
So there you see Jessica making a joke. She's like, oh, it's a dangerous business, commodities trading. Who knows if it was targeted? She's smiling. And I just want to remind you that Mike Gill died. He died from that wound.
Finally, DC using the data on how to address crime in the city. But I don't know, that guy that was a commodities future trader, dangerous business. Who knows if it was organized or random? But I kind of like this approach.
He's dead now. He's not alive. He was murdered by this carjacker that Jessica Burbank is joking about. And by the way, at the time that they recorded this video, the other person that was carjacked, he also was killed. So Mike Gill died from this. Ha ha. Isn't it funny? Commodities trading is so dangerous. How dare you work in the Trump administration and try to pick up your wife, wait in your car for her? You're dead now. And that's hilarious to Jessica Burbank.
It seems to be the right approach to me, given that the data shows that when people are comfortable, have access to resources, are receiving a good education, have a stable job, is that they don't commit crimes as much. And so as a city, you've got to focus on being a flourishing city because, he said we cannot arrest and prosecute our way out of this. I think he's right. That punishment can't be the solution here. It needs to be a much longer term root source solution.
So punishment, let's be clear, is the solution right here. Punishment would have saved not only the 2 lives of the victims, but the perpetrator in this particular instance would not have been killed by the police when he decided to have a shootout with them. And the reason I know this is because this guy had a long criminal history. He was arrested as recently as last year. These were serious felony charges. And if they just prosecuted him, if they just held him, if the DC AG actually did his damn job, then he wouldn't have been out on the street in the first place. He wouldn't have killed these 2 people. But think about it like this. If that didn't happen, Jessica Burbank wouldn't have had something to laugh at. She wouldn't have had something to take joy in.
It seems to be the right approach to me, given that the data shows that when people are comfortable, have access to resources, are receiving a good education, have a stable job, is that they don't commit crimes as much.
Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. All of the data and all the research shows us that poverty is not actually the root cause of crime in the first place. In fact, crime drives poverty because if you're in a dangerous area where theft is up, if you're in an area where murder is up, that is less likely to draw in investment into businesses to develop the area because of the higher rates of crime. If you're opening up a store, your insurance premiums are going to be higher. We've seen this over and over again. There are great examples of this, like the LA riots, and how that part of LA, the parts where they did have riots, didn't recover financially for a decade, and even then they were only at their 1992 levels in the year 2002. And in fact, a lot of the research shows that they're still lagging behind, and that is because of a sudden major event in terms of crime. So yeah, crime drives poverty, not the other way around. But more importantly, even if we were to accept the premise, even if we were to accept that poverty is the root cause of crime, which again is not supported by the data, we've been growing in wealth and reducing in crime. We've been growing in income inequality, which a lot of these people also cite as a root cause of crime, and crime has been declining during those same periods. But ignoring all of that, even if we were to accept that premise, that doesn't mean that the best way to address criminality is to address that root cause. Think about it like this. The root cause of earthquakes is shifting tectonic plates. Now, if I were to give you $10 billion in order to deal with the problems of earthquakes, how would you spend that money? Would you spend it trying to control the tectonic plates beneath the surface in the crust of the earth? Or would you spend that money on earthquake proofing different buildings to mitigate the cost and not address the root cause? In that particular circumstance, you'd be an absolute idiot to spend 10, 100 times, 1,000 times the amount of money on the root cause rather than addressing the symptoms, because that's the most efficient way to address the problem. Well, criminality is the same exact way. If they would have incapacitated this person, if they would have held him accountable before, locked him up, put him in a cage, guess what? He wouldn't have been out on the streets. Now, that didn't address the sad sack life that he had before, the thing that made him like Aladdin, a thief with a heart of gold who murdered 2 people that Jessica finds to be so funny. But guess what? It would have prevented the murder. It would have solved the problem. It would have addressed it in the most efficient way humanly possible.
Were you being serious about the Trump official being a target, or was that a joke?
Commodities future trading, that is a dangerous business.
Yeah.
I do believe it's a very dangerous business. Commodities future trading, that is a dangerous business.
Yeah.
I do believe it's a very dangerous business.
Were you joking about that being the reason why he was killed during a carjacking, though?
Oh, I don't believe he was shot during a carjacking. That guy was shot on his way to pick up his wife. But we never know in the case of a shooting if it's premeditated, if there's a motivation here, or if it was a random act.
So Amber, who's the sensible person in this particular conversation, asks her, is she serious about this guy being killed or commodities futures trading being a dangerous business, and Jessica doubles down. Now, one of the reasons why she's doubling down is because Jessica Burbank is a communist. So she thinks commodities future trading, you're working in finance, that makes you a bad person deserving of death. And this is one of the reasons why you should never give communists any political power. This is their ideology. This is why when they take political power, they kill people, because they believe that you are inherently evil for being successful in a market economy. So she's laughing it up about this guy who's in critical condition. Again, he died. He's survived by his wife and children. They don't have a husband. They don't have a father now in their household. But that is really funny to Jessica. So, commodities future trading isn't that fantastic? And let's be very sympathetic to the poor sad sack criminal who murdered this person and then murdered another person.
Right. So what happened is that he was in the car in the driver's seat picking up his wife from work, and a man came into the passenger side and shot him in pursuit of stealing his vehicle. The guy managed to get out of the car and collapsed on the sidewalk, and the suspect fled on foot, where he went on to then carjack 3 other people. In fact, the incident immediately following, he shot a male individual with his girlfriend, took his car keys, but then I guess after shooting him decided to flee. Then he stole 2 more cars that evening. He was eventually killed himself because he decided at the end of his carjacking spree to shoot at police officers, and they fired upon him and killing him. So
Amber breaks down the timeline for Jessica as if she's an idiot, because spoiler alert, if the shoe fits, you gotta wear it, Jessica. And during the course of these other crimes, Alberto Vasquez Jr., pictured here with his family, was also killed for his keys. Apparently he was in a car with his girlfriend, so his girlfriend had to watch him die within 90 minutes of this particular incident. But it's okay, because Jessica got a good laugh at the fact that one of the people who were shot and ultimately ended up dying as well was a commodities trader. So I guess if it makes Jessica laugh, then Alberto Vasquez Jr.'s death is just a little bit of contributing factor to that. I mean, it's all fine and dandy. It's all a-okay. All of these children in the photo with them, they could just suck it up because Jessica Burbank got some enjoyment out of this repeat offender being released over and over again. By the way, these are the same people who talk about how the left has all the empathy for the criminal, but not for the actual victims of those criminals. But I don't know if you guys know this, the car prices, they're pretty high. So what was this person to do but murder 2 people for their vehicles while having fun?
But I find it rich what the Attorney General Brian Schwab is saying there. I mean, I agree that obviously to reduce crime, you should try to address root causes.
So I'm going to disagree with Amber right here. I don't agree that to reduce crime, you have to address root causes, or you even should address root causes. If the most efficient way to reduce crime is to go after a root cause, then that's fine. That's perfectly okay. That's first class all the way. But if it's wildly inefficient, see my earthquake example, then no, you definitely should not go after root causes. You should go after the most efficient mechanism in order to reduce crime, because that is the best way to spend finite resources. So I actually disagree with Amber right here. I think she's actually conceding way too much ground right here. I think the data does not support this. I'm going to link an essay from James Q. Wilson in the description of this video where you can read up on these root cause fallacies. You could read up on how when poverty was actually declining in this country going into the 1960s, that is the same period of time that we actually saw a dramatic spike in crime. So no, I don't believe that. I'll also link resources about how during the Great Recession, we ended up seeing a dramatic crime drop, despite the fact that people like Jessica Burbank think that poverty is causing everything. This guy murdered a former Trump administration official and then murdered another person to feed his starving family. That's the theory put forward. But guess what? It's not supported by reality.
Obviously, to reduce crime, you should try to address root causes, but that takes a long time. And we don't have time to spare right now with the issues that we're having in Washington, D.C. When you actually look at reporting that's been done on the spree of teen carjackings in this city, they are quite clear about their reasons for doing it. It's not about poverty or broken homes or not being in school. They do it because it's fun, because it's a thrill, and because they know that they're not going to be held accountable for it.
Now, this is 100% correct. It is no surprise at the same exact time that we lowered the penalties for Grand Theft Auto, that we lowered the penalties on youthful offenders, despite your peak offending years being ages 14 to 24, that we saw a dramatic spike in crime amongst that group of people. We saw it in Raise the Age in New York City. Year over year, we saw 10% increases or 10% jumps in youthful recidivism. We see that across the nation in this whole Kia Boys trend. Yes, there is a manufacturer defect that makes these cars easier to steal, but when you actually talk to the people stealing the cars, one of the things that they say that they're fully aware of is the fact that there are no consequences for this. Remember this clip from the Kia Boys documentary where the guy said that he was only going to get 2 weeks if he got busted.
And are you scared of potentially ever going to jail? You ever think about that?
No, I ain't gonna lie. I'm only scared of the black truck. Fuck the police. I ain't gonna lie. I'm only scared of the black truck. Other than that, fuck the police.
Have you thought about how you would spend that time?
You only gonna do like 3 weeks shit. It's a misdemeanor.
You only do 3 weeks for stealing a car?
Hell yeah, it's a misdemeanor.
So is there really no punishment for this?
Hell no.
And that is not an effective deterrent.
And unfortunately, these are not victimless crimes. You're ending up with hundreds of people who are dealing with the trauma of having a gun pointed to their head simply for the crime of driving around their city where their officials and their police are supposed to protect them. So I think bare minimum, you have to say that these kids should face some accountability. The biggest deterrent of crime is the certainty of getting caught, and then a complex range of things related to punishment in terms of both the swiftness of punishment, the severity of punishment, and the certainty of punishment.
One of the sad states of this nation right now is that basic things like, hey, when you point a gun at somebody and you threaten to murder them for their vehicle or actually murder them for their vehicle, which makes Jessica Burbank laugh, but, you know, is actually dangerous and has tragic impacts to everybody that is involved, that is a violent crime. And I appreciate Amber saying that, but I just want to point out that it's sad that somebody has to say that an adult person, Jessica Burbank, needs to be told this like she's a 5-year-old. But again, this is somebody who went to Brown University. This is somebody who's a communist. So this is someone not capable of rational thought, self-reflection, or anything like that. And again, she gets off. She enjoys the fact that a Trump administration official, somebody who works in finance, was killed in this particular incident. It's funny. It's hilarious to her. She wants tickets to the funeral so that she can go laugh at the families of Mike Gill and at the families of Alberto Vasquez Jr. because you know what? That guy had a sad life behind him. He was such a sad sack. He's basically Aladdin, and you kind of had it coming. Why did you have a car in Washington, D.C. when this person, who probably did have a car, by the way, maybe he wanted that car, so, you know, your life is forfeit in that scenario.
I feel like people don't pursue a life of crime because it's fun. I feel like people get involved in crime because they're in desperate situations. Maybe some of them end up finding some joy in what they end up doing with their time, find a thrill in doing carjackings. But I don't know. Maybe it's people who are playing GTA and they genuinely think it's fun and, you know, it's very exciting to steal cars. But I think most of them are in a position where they're doing carjackings, they're doing burglaries because they need money and because the price of cars have gone up so much. And, you know, we've seen used car truck salesmen increase their profit tremendously. Their markup once they get to the lot is very high. We also saw the price of cars going up during the pandemic, of course.
So Jessica Burbank is one of those special kinds of not smart people. The special kinds of not smart people that manage to get their way into an Ivy League university, in this case Brown University, because she keeps repeating this idea that the price of used cars is dictating carjacking, that because people can't afford cars, just like she said in the previous video, and they need cars to do things like shop for groceries, that's why they're pointing guns in people's faces and killing them for their vehicles. Now, I will point out that this person went on a carjacking spree. He repeatedly stole cars, ditched them after he crashed them, and then stole another car. Where's the profit motive in that, Jessica? I know that you don't have any context for a criminal, like you grew up in very privileged, sheltered circumstances. You've never interacted with a criminal, but can you not make it so obvious to the general public that you have no idea what the hell you're talking about? And again, I will point out that her idea about the price of used cars being the driving factor, they're falling and yet they're increasing in their rate of carjacking in the District of Columbia. Also, the price of used cars nationwide seems to not have a correlation with carjackings nationwide because what we're seeing is isolated pockets, places that actually reduce the penalties for carjackings, maybe that could be connected in some way, shape, or form, that are having the increase in carjackings. Maybe it's policy, Jessica. Maybe that that's what's going on. Maybe that's what's actually occurring. And I will also point out the obvious fact that elevated prices do not necessarily mean elevated profits. I did a whole video about how I ended up trading in a used car in order to get greater value than I had in the payoff amount, and how you should do that back in the day, because this was the consequences of the market that we were in. So yeah, they were charging more for used cars, but they were also paying more for used cars because there was a supply crunch on used cars, something that Jessica doesn't understand, because she doesn't understand supply and demand, or anything honestly related to politics or policy, or even the way that humans interact.
But I think all in all, what we're seeing here is the result of the city kind of degrading because of a lack of investment in working people and working communities and having good paid jobs and protections against workers being exploited. I think, it would be very ignorant to assume that most of the crimes committed in the United States are just for fun.
So of course Jessica is saying, oh, the reason these people are committing crimes is because there's not enough welfare. Now she says investment in working people, but what she actually means is welfare handouts. If only we gave this double murderer a couple of extra checks from the federal dole, he wouldn't have committed all these crimes. And then she says, oh, it's crazy for you to assume that most crimes are committed for fun. Nobody actually said that most crimes are committed for fun. That is something that Jessica cooked up in her brain. Crimes are committed for a variety of reasons, opportunity and all that, but they're not all rooted in poverty. I mean, just think about it. There was no economic gain for this carjacker. He shot and killed 2 people for cars. One of them, he just ditched the scene after he took the keys, carjacked 2 additional people, and was just jumping from vehicle to vehicle with no plan of profit. So Jessica, I would like you to explain to me where this guy was going to make the big money and stick it to the man for the price of used cars, or how he was set off by this used car dealership. Now, I could show you a lengthy rap sheet, a pattern of behavior, something that could have been justification to get him off the streets before this murder, but obviously this particular crime was not a crime of economic opportunity. This was not a crime of the fact that, oh my God, they refused to invest in DC, and if only they gave him more welfare, he wouldn't have committed it. This was a violent person who wanted something and decided to take it. And even if he had a sad sack life, even if he was, oh, I was just so poor and I can't afford a used car, that doesn't give him justification to murder 2 people. I know it made Jessica Burbank happy. I know it made her laugh. I know it made her smile. But overall, I don't think that is adequate justification for his particular actions.
Yeah, DC is GTA, unfortunately, and it's not ignorant to talk about it for what it is. It is exactly what is happening, that kids are following social media trends and getting a kick out of stealing cars. They're not actually, most of them are not selling the cars. They actually end up abandoning the cars a few blocks down the road, a few miles down the road, and then they carjack another one. I mean, these individuals are legitimately going on sprees, stealing 4 or 5 cars in an evening, and then just abandoning it when they get bored of it to try to find some upgrade. And this is not me saying this. I'm not just, projecting my feelings about what's happening on DC. First of all, I've lived here for a decade. I've been following the reporters who are talking about this issue.
Now, Amber points out, and accurately so right here, that the kids that are stealing these cars, the Kia boys and all that, the ones that are filming themselves, the ones that steal the car, they drive them around, crash them, abandon them, and steal another car, they are doing it for fun. They are doing it for entertainment. They've told us that repeatedly. Again, see the Kia Boys documentary that is linked in the description of this video for yourself. And there is no economic gain from this. They're not selling the cars or anything like that. And the reason this is increasing is not because, oh my God, the price of used cars, you guys don't even realize. It's gone up so much because of the evil capitalists. It has nothing to do with supply and demand. It has nothing to do with the lockdowns that, by the way, Jessica Burbank supported, that she cheered on, that created the supply crunch, that created the problem for people actually trying to buy cars. It's all about the price, man. It's all about the price. The Kia boys, they're robbing cars, filming themselves on TikTok, hanging out of the cars, crashing them, and all that with no discernible profit motive, no way to make money from this, all because they're just poor and they had such a sad sack life. And that's why 14-year-olds are stealing cars. It has nothing to do with the fact that they lowered the penalty specifically for this, and you have repeat offenders that have stolen hundreds of cars because there are no consequences for that. It's all about the fact that, oh my God, the price is so high. Even though it's falling right now, it is so high, and that's what's happening right now.
that the carjackings in DC are just a bunch of guys who like playing GTA and want to make it real. I think most of the time it's people who need the money that they ultimately get from selling the car. And that's an unfortunate reality, but the data really shows that when someone's in a more desperate economic situation, they have a propensity to commit crimes. And that's true not just of DC. Thankfully, outside of DC, we've seen crime go down nationally, and carjacking's the only stat where it's up. So hopefully, with longer term solutions, we can address some of the crime that we're seeing in the country.
Now, of course, Jessica says, oh, well, the nationwide crime numbers are going down, so this is nothing to worry about it. Forget about it. Stop talking about it. In fact, the problem is that you're talking about it, even though, again, carjackings in DC are up. Violent crime in DC is, in fact, up. And by the way, crime has not fallen to pre-Black Lives Matter levels. It has not fallen to 2019 levels, as we documented on this channel multiple different times. But of course, the issue is poverty. Oh my God, such a sad sack. These people are so poor. What are they even going to do? They have to murder people for their vehicles and not even take their vehicle because, that's just the sad state of their lives. But even then, you shouldn't be talking about it. You shouldn't discuss criminality. You shouldn't talk about crime. You're the problem, because identifying a problem is worse than anything you could possibly do in this country. Just ignore it and talk about the issues that I want to talk about. Talk about unionization. Did you know if you put this 13-year-old in a union, if you invested with welfare spending in midnight basketball and put them in a midnight basketball union, then they would stop stealing cars? Are you guys aware of that? Are you guys aware of this study? Here's the full study right here. I have it in a paperwork. You might think it's invisible because it doesn't exist, but trust me, I got the data and all that on it, and you can't prosecute your way out of this. I mean, people in DC, by the time they get to murder, have had typically on average 11 other arrests previous to that, and if you held them from one of those 11 arrests, then they wouldn't have been able to commit the murder. But you can't prosecute your way out of that, because Jessica Burbank from Brown University, the girl who thinks communism is still a good idea, did an entire TED Talk about it, thinks that you just can't do it. Don't worry about it. At first I thought I was just going to make fun of Jessica. I thought I was going to show you this clip of the Kia boys committing crimes, obviously for fun, and we were going to have a grand old time at her expense. But now that I look at this video, now that I analyze it myself, I realize that poverty is the cause. If you guys out there in the audience can tell the police what poverty is wearing in this clip, what they look like, maybe they can finally make an arrest. Maybe poverty could be put behind bars for the first time ever, and we can solve criminality. Just, again, send the description of the clothing to the police department right now so that they can finally arrest poverty, because we all know what's behind this. It's poverty. Now look, obviously this is an insanely stupid, absurd segment, yet another one from Jessica Burbank, and we should not be surprised at this point in time. However, what makes this one stand out is the fact that she took joy in the fact that a former Trump administration official was shot at the time that she did this video by somebody who she knew committed an additional murder on this crime spree, and she thought it was funny and she thought it was a laughable moment, haha, no big deal, and that guy ultimately ended up dying. Two men were ripped away from their families, ripped away from their children, ripped away from their girlfriend, and in the Trump administration official from their wife. And that was a laugh riot for Jessica Burbank, because she's an Ivy League educated gal. She's somebody who's far more sophisticated and doesn't think about the petty things like people losing their lives to these criminals, because what about the sad sack life of the criminals? Why don't we give them more midnight basketball so that they stop committing crimes? Because that has been proven to work, data pending on when that's actually going to be shown to the public. But you know what? I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Jessica Burbank cheering for a double murderer. Till next time.